What's up guys, my name is Richard and today we're going to be talking about the wide range versus tight range liquidity pools. Some people like to flash their APRs, right, like 100, 200, 300% APRs because they have tight ranges. But I'll explain towards the end of the video why I prefer wider ranges and it might work out better in the long run. So let's dive right into the pros and cons of a tight range liquidity pools, right? Number one is the pro is you're getting high fee because your liquidity is quite concentrated in a certain range, right? And this is great during the ranging markets when the prices aren't moving a lot, right? During low volatility market conditions. And it could be great if you use leverage or hedge your positions. And I'll explain an example in a second. But there's quite a few cons, right? There's more impermanent loss. When the price diverges from your initial entry price, you're suffering more impermanent loss because it's getting converted at a faster rate compared to a wide range or a full range. And there's more management and rebalancing because oftentimes if there's a big move in the market, then you're getting knocked out of range. And there's less asset appreciation, especially for crypto and crypto liquidity pools. Those crypto are rocketing upwards. If there's a big move in the market, then you're getting much less capital gains on your asset. And generally, it's harder to beat impermanent loss in volatile markets. You could actually lose money versus just holding the tokens. So this is ETH and USDC. And if you look here, back in February until around August of last year, it's about 167 days. If you had a tight range of, let's say, about 2,800 to 4,100, right, then you might have outperformed people with wider ranges. But as you can see, after less than even half a year, right, you're knocked out of range pretty sharply down here back in the August dump of last year, and then you're forced to rebalance. And if you got into a tight range back in August, then you're in range for about 96 days before ETH moves upwards quite sharply. So there's definitely cases for outperformance using tight ranges, but in the long term, to me, it's hard to predict where the market is going to move. For example, I could see that ETH could probably grind here on the lower range for a while, like back here towards the end of last year, right? Before a big move up potentially. But I don't really know for sure, right? There could be a catalyst or some positive news that kind of drive the price action upwards at any time. And one possible way to combat impermanent loss is, let's say you're providing liquidity during this time, right? You're hedging your position by either selling a lot of your fees into stable coins or you're adding some shorts to ETH. Or during this time when the price is low, you might have put ETH up as collateral and then you lend out USDC to yield farm here before it pumps, right? So when ETH pumps, you're not suffering as much as if you use your whole ETH bag to yield farm down here. So we're going to compare with the wide range liquidity pools. The pros of wide range is you're still getting moderate fees, right? There's higher fees in volatile markets because those tight ranges get knocked out of range. And there's less impermanent loss when you're using wider ranges, and there's less management and rebalancing compared to tight ranges. But the cons is there's less fees when the market is not volatile, or if there's a lot of liquidity concentration in the pool, right? I'll show you guys an example in a sec. And there's more impermanent loss than full range pools. So if we're looking at, for example, MOG and ETH here, a big meme coin, but quite volatile, as you can see. I actually just entered into a new position, right? My ranges are quite high, 256% on the upside and roughly 50% on the downside. But the reason why I did that is because it's really hard to see when it's going to be ranging, right? Before it reverses to an uptrend or if it's going to continue downwards towards the downtrend. For example, if I had set a tight range here, I might have been ranged for about 100 days before I suffer a lot of impermanent loss, right? And maybe the fees will cover it, but maybe not. And that's assuming if I had a perfect entry. If I had entered a bit late, maybe in the middle here, right, my pool might have been in range for only 61 days before I'm forced to rebalance and maybe wider my range so then I don't incur a lot of impermanent loss. But at that point, you might as well start off with a wider range. So here's an example of liquidity concentration I was talking about. When the liquidity is concentrated here, my APR is less since I'm using a wide range, right? Based on the 30 days, it's still averaging about 160% APR. This is MOG and ETH on base, Uniswap. And if we move the slider here, right, towards when there's less liquidity concentration, maybe MOG takes a big dump, right? Then my APR shoots up a lot before, those people with tighter ranges start to rebalance. And sometimes when this happens, guys, I'm pulling in, $600, $1,000 in fees in just one day, right? When there's big moves in the market. And like I was saying earlier, right, if you set the ranges too tight, then you're missing out on the capital appreciation. So when MOG is pumping against ETH, for example, then I'm gaining much more ETH if I have a wider range compared to a tight range. And if we look at a low cap token like Pixel that I'm really bullish on, for example, right, I'm setting my ranges all the way up here at a pretty much a 20x from now because I don't want to miss out on a lot of outperformance of Pixel. I'm still getting quite good fees, above 50% APR, and I'm happy to provide the liquidity all day, right? And lastly, let's look at the full range liquidity pools. So full range LPs are very passive. There's less impermanent loss because those two tokens are converted at a much slower rate, right? And it's great in a volatile market. It's great for higher volume, volatile, low cap tokens like memes. I made like a couple $1,000 providing liquidity for mid to small cap memes using full range liquidity positions. And it usually auto compounds if it's like a V2 Uniswap position or like a full range position on Radium. And there's no competition from tight ranges if it's V2. So the drawback for full range LPs is that there's less flexibility. You're forced to maintain a 50% ratio of the tokens when you deposit. So you can't really do like a one-sided LP. For example, I can't just put up ETH if I'm providing liquidity for ETH and USDC, right? And there's often lower fees and APR for full range liquidity pools, and it's less capital efficient than if you kind of squeeze the range just by a little bit. But here's an example where a full range LP might make sense for you. For example, if you're bullish on Sol USDC past 30 days is pulling about 38% APR, which is quite great for full range liquidity pools, right? You'll miss out more on the upside when Sol pumps because your Sol is getting slowly converted to USDC, but you're getting APR out of that, right? And you also suffer less downside than if you're just holding purely Sol because you have the USDC to absorb the dump. So just a short recap on why I prefer wide range LPs is because tight ranges often get knocked out of range, right? When we're shifting from a ranging market to a trending market. And I gain a lot of fees when those tight ranges get knocked out of range. And it's easier to outperform impermanent loss and just holding because I'm not incurring a lot of impermanent loss as long as I have a decent entry and the APR is decent. There's much less management, right? I rarely have to rebalance if I have to at all. And crypto is volatile. It's really hard to predict tight ranges. If we looked at the ETH example, right, we don't know when a big move is going to happen. And it's really a longer term investment style, right? A lot of times when I'm entering a pool, I'm looking at 3 to 6 months. I'm not looking at how much I'm earning this month or this week, right? It usually beats the short term, in my opinion. And lastly, I used to run a hybrid strategy where I put like maybe 80% of my funds in a wider range LPs and a tighter range LP about 20%, right? And then what I do is I compound my tight range LPs into the wide range LPs for more capital appreciation, right? This is something you could do also if you want to try the tight range, but it's much less risk than if you put 100% in tight range, right? Because if the market moves against you, then you might have to realize a lot of impermanent loss. So just using Pixel as an example here, this is my wide range LP, right? But I also used to have a tight range LP that covers like basically the top of the range and the bottom of the range, right? And the reason why I don't do a lot of that now is because now I'm much more focused on capital appreciation versus purely just fees. And if you look at my APR right now, it's averaging about 55%, even with lower volume, right? It's beating impermanent loss. The profit loss in fiat terms is negative because the alt market has been retracing for a while now. Don't get tricked into believing that you need to be like, pulling in 100% APR or above with tighter ranges, right? A lot of times when you do that, you're putting yourself at a much higher risk. And even if you're pulling 50% APR and you're confident that the price is going to rise above your entry price, right? 50% is super high when you compare it to, traditional markets or any other forms of investment, right? 50% per year. If you have $100,000, you realize 50% per year, that's 50,000 in the first year, 75,000 the next year, right? And it compounds and compounds. So that's the game, guys. That's the game I'm playing, and hopefully that makes sense. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions or comments, just leave them down below. I'll try to answer them when I get the chance. Please like, subscribe, and share the video if this helped you, and it will help me out a lot. I'll talk to you guys next time.